Sneeze. Ooh. Perfect timing. Hey, I assume Jimmy on Mr. GIF. I don't have any set plan for today. So let's start off by taking a piece of 8.5 by 11. I have been tested a few times for COVID, and every time it's come back negative. But I'm isolated, so it's not a risk to you. Where is my ruler? Here it is. Hello, Marine. It's weird now I'm starting to do this consistently enough to where I recognize some handles. Negative for, I guess the last time was like 2 weeks ago. I forget. Come on. Got that nose thing going. It is uncomfortable, but more comforting to me to know whether or not I'm potentially contagious. And then, if I am sick, whether or not I can donate plasma. Okay, so what I'm marking off right now. This pen isn't in great working condition. Don't touch stuff that I'm touching right now. Okay, so what I've been doing most recently is making designs that could be printed on shirts so that you could get a shirt if you want a shirt. And the max printing area for the shirt is 6 by 8. Well, it's 12. Come on, pen. 12 by 16. And this page is 8.5 by 11. Hello, Kohitzel. Is that reference? The only etzels that I know are pretzels and quetzels. Because I used to have a computer program that was like, here, learn about stuff. And it was like, there's an animal for every letter of the alphabet. And it gets to Q, and it's like, we got one. It's quetzal, which is a bird that... Is it that? I'm like, no, there's quail. Quetzal, quail. I guess they're all birds. Or they're named Queen something or other. Like Queen Triggerfish. It's with a T, not a slur. And that's in reference to the fact that... Okay, that's all over the place. This is not quite 8 by 12, because it's 8.5 by 11. But you want to get that ratio of 3 to 4. And since this is less than 12 in one direction, the ratio ends up being, because this has a maximum length of 12 or 11 inches in one direction, multiply that by 3/4 and you end up with 8 1/4, or 1 1/4, 8 1/4. So that's what this width is. So this ratio is 3 by 4, which is maximum printable area on the shirts that I've been getting. Is this low on ink or something? Let's just take a look, see. Yeah, it's a bit low. Okay. Let's refill it. So I got my ink well, my ink. Just put some more ink in there. Not too much, because then what happens is when you push this down, it's going to do it regardless, but squishes ink out the side. Does it more so if you overfill it. And then you should clean it before you put it back in, because that ink gets in the threads of the pin, and then it dries up in there and it just becomes a mess in general. But I also haven't been taking super great care of this pen. Every now and again I have to rinse it out, and ideally I have better success when I use ethyl rubbing alcohol. It seems to dissolve it a bit better than isopropyl. There's two main kinds of rubbing alcohol. Isopropyl, which I think is more common for disinfectants, and methyl, which is distilled in a similar way to most alcohol. I think it might have some additive in it to make it so you don't drink it, which is a Prohibition era thing. Anyway, so here's my working area. I think today I'm going to try and sketch out some sort of general spacing of stuff, because when I've tried to do figures just freehand using brush and ink in the past, I end up having some weird spaces, so I want to be able to erase it and be slightly less committal than I might have been in previous instances. So I think I'm just gonna try and do some figures today. I don't know. Or I kind of wanted to mess with, since I'm wearing this shirt, which is based off of, it's a walking animation, but it's based off of some of the work of Shigeo Fukuda, where he did a lot of things that would take like a basic image. Let's just have someone standing, and for the sake of this illustration, I'm gonna have it be sort of foreground, background. He took stuff like this, simple drawings, and he would then, this would be more visually interesting if I actually rip it. Then he would like essentially cut it apart. And when you have something that is that simplified, you can start to rearrange it and create odds and ends of illusions. So, thank you, Santuario Danina? So you can have this figure. It's now cut into sections. And it all sort of stems from some aspects of optical illusions and stuff like that, where when you have something simplified, you can really start to play with how it exists in a space. He did a lot of things with dachshunds, with wiener dogs, that I really liked. Shigeo Fukuda was a Japanese designer. There's a basic example of like, now you start to have, let's try and make this way. It looks like it's a figure, but it's actually offset, segmented, and the positive and negative space plays with one another, because this starts to be like the front part of a different leg, but it's actually the back part. I wanted to try doing a little wiener dog to show you some other stuff that he sort of did. So you would have like, you have your sort of elongated, let's give him a little tongue, figure of a little doggy. Let me give it some. These are like straight up. This is like a straight up copy of stuff that he did. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Still watching Louisville. I went to middle and high school in Louisville, and it's interesting seeing that space at a distance. I donated some money to the Louisville Community Bail Fund. And if you buy it, I guess those pins are downstairs? Or are they up here? Let me see if they're up here. Yep, they're up here. I ordered these pins like back in February or something. See how that looks. I ordered these pins back in February with the intent of having them available for sale, but also to put them into these gumball machines that I had purchased. But if you buy one of these, all the proceeds go to the Louisville Community Bail Fund. And those are in the web store. If you want something and to contribute, but there are other people who are doing similar things. But with Shigeo Fukuda, he would do, let's get more tracing paper. He would do these things where it plays with your sense of positive, negative space and what the actual, this one I'm just gonna, for the sake of clarity, not include the little tongue or the second ear. So you can start with this, and then you can do something as simple as offsetting the entry point. And it's almost like so now you have this weird wiener dog. But he also did ones that were a little bit more extreme. Yeah, that's loud. Okay. Where you could then, I don't know if I have enough space for this, twist it back around onto itself. That's about as much as I can get away with. This would be a little bit more organized for this sort of deal, but simple exercises where you cut apart images and reposition them. But this is like a straight up copy of Shigeo Fukuda. If I'm saying his name wrong, very sorry. But he also had just very nice, simplified poster designs that, like, it's playing with stuff. It's very playful, but it can be impactful otherwise. Where it's, rearranging things and treating it differently. He also did sculptures that were based on perspective things, stuff like that. Again, that's Shigeo Fukuda. So that's just me going through some stuff. But I might try to do some sort of walk cycle that's similar to this, but maybe plays a little bit more with it. These work best with outlines. They don't work as well if you have solids, because once you have a solid, you don't have as much room to play with where lines start and end if you're dealing with solid forms. So like if you have a figure that is filled in, You can still play with it, but it's not as open. Because now you really see the breaks and everything. Because when you have these outlines in simpler forms, you can play with it a lot more. So I'm not sure. Should I just play with... Set this really to the side. It's getting super loud when it's there. If I have a figure like this, where can I break it up? I could break it up along that line, or I could do it at something else of an angle. Because you have sort of entry points, exit points with lines like this, following sort of patterns, but then you could offset this to where now the mouth is like this, but I don't know if it's as perceptible. There's a balance with how much you can and can't abstract things. I think I've tried this before and it didn't really work in this capacity. I think it sort of has to be outlines of a figure. It's also something playing like Surrealists had the Exquisite Corpse sort of game, where what they'd do is they'd fold a piece of paper and one person would draw top figure and do whatever they wanted to do. Belly button, and then you mark where it goes to the bottom, and then the other person would just draw whatever they wanted to on that bottom section, and you'd have this mismatch. You have that sort of form going that way. Now I don't know what I want to do today. What time is it? It's only been like 10 minutes of this. Drink some tea, and what do I want to do? Hello folks. That's a nice little doggy icon. I also like William's Pictures icon. I like everyone's icons because it feels weird to discredit anyone for that sort of deal. What do I want to do? I feel like I want to animate, but I also don't want to take the time to animate today because I have plans later. What do I want to do? Sketch something. I don't want to just do a Shikeo Fukuda like straight up interpolation. Done that before, but it also has a different sense of ownership. Pattern-based things. Set up a grid and mess with that, like a straight up grid, and fill in the spot with blockheads, but I don't want to do just more blockhead stuff. Or do I? I don't know. Let's just draw some lines. Okay, this is 11 inches. Let's just mark it up every edge. If you're ever dealing with factory produced stuff, use the same leading edge. So don't flip your ruler around because there can be inconsistencies as stuff's going along, which can result in non-straight lines. 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll mark down 8. If there are any things you guys want to see or have questions about, just leave it in the comments. Now let's mark this down. Slightly off, but this doesn't have to be perfect. It's just figuring out stuff and doing things because I don't know what else to do. Easy out is just doing faces or loops, but I want to try and do different things, work towards different things. That's just a 1-inch grid. Maybe I'll mess with that, doing something of a Tetris blockhead. I haven't done too much. Most of the blockhead grids that I've done before have been restricted by not bending. They're just flat. And I could fill out spaces on a grid format where faces bend or do U-turns, stuff like that. I might see what that looks like. I've done bending, twisting faces in the past, but not in this sort of form. So like in the past, it's pretty consistently just like if it's a blockhead face sort of deal, it's this sort of guy, but it's never been this sort of guy. And I think that could be fun and interesting. Can also play more with the extremes of the noses, stuff like that. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna mess with that within this sort of grid, but I'm gonna it's probably advantageous to me to just treat this as a grid that exists, come back on top of it. And let's see. Mark this out. Might as well just tear this down. a little bit more annoying because it's a thinner piece, but it is going the direction of the grain. Come on. Oh, okay. Figured that would happen. Okay. This is mainly because the scanner I have is just a little bit smaller. It's scanning like flatbed area than the size of the tracing paper I have. Tracing paper is 9 by 12. And I will tape this on this edge. Tape's over here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just has to be within the general realm of things. If I could give myself a little bit of breathing room, that's just better experience overall. Okay. So just for my own reference, mark those spots. And I'll put a little tape on this edge as well. So now let's play with creating a grid. So I'll start off simple. I'm just going to go straight to ink. Don't have as much cleanup to do later on. And because I'm going to be digitizing this ultimately, I'm just going to do the outlines and not be filling in the space as much. I could deal with using one of these guys. Not that one of these guys. Those are too big. One of these guys. No. Trying to work too fast. Okay. Let's break in this brush. Starting off simple. Since this is ultimately going to be living vertically, I'm going to make Let's try it. How do I want to do it? Do I want to do a big nose or a folded over guy? I'm going to do a folded over guy. little dude here. We'll have him facing this direction. Now let me shift this down, or let's just make it wide. That's a better call. Angle that a little bit away so that if someone texts me or something, you guys don't get to see it. Thumbs up, Mariah. What should come next? Big nose person? I'll try a big nose and see how I do or don't like it. You can hear my computer fan in the background. Cool with big nose guy. Let's see what folded with the nose coming forward looks like. Make the nose fall here. Down and over. I like that fun. I don't think I have anyone upside down yet. A more zigzag deal. Here's a true Tetris piece. Tetris was developed in the Soviet Union. using Tetris is a reference to the fact that it's 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 in any shape. And this is a very successful game that I think the guy who made it had issues with ownership because it was owned by the state, because it was in the Soviet Union. That's why Tetris's classic music has something of a, depending on how you want to label it, Russian or Soviet style to the music, and why there's a lot of onion domes in the artwork. I'm going to do a U-turn person, but what direction should it be facing? This way. So I'm going to have this figure turned into itself. I also have yet to do a single block. Thumbs up. Mishharinskaya? I don't know how to separate people's names out, which I think I've mentioned on every single stream. Let's have it go this direction. I have more options for variations now. Yes, yes, yes. If you're someone who is watching this later on YouTube, I don't have the comments recorded, which means sometimes I just say something that people comment and there's no reference point. Make a single square dude. It's also looking this way. Yeah. Now let's do big nose. Big nose double face. I haven't tried that. I need to break this line so that's not all the way down. Let's make a bigger dude. Hello, Fedor Zima. Make another big nose. Alright. I'm going to do it this way. Does this edge have a little bit of leeway? I don't know. This one's easier to count because it's on a grid of sorts, but I thought about trying to use my careful with wires. Okay, my mechanical counter. There it is. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. Click, 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 click. Hey, Alex. How's it going? Let's make a short, fat dude. Hello, Jaime. At least I'm assuming that's how you say it. Maybe you say it Jamie, in which case, lo siento, I'm sorry. Let's double it up, make this a two-face guy. Let's try a longer guy. Oh no. Some brushes just fell. Nothing bad, just a few brushes. And I didn't set them back well. There you go. Okay, so now I'm going to try doing a guy that takes up, it's another, what would be a true Tetris piece. Meaning it takes up 4 blocks. I haven't tried that yet. Let's have this guy have a nose that pokes out a little. And stops. About yay. Hello in Colombia. Thanks for watching. Colombia. 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 I don't want to go about this next bit. I do have a big nose facing that way. I have a big nose that way. I might try this. Too many already sort of facing that way. Let's do a big nose, long face. Let's do a long squiggly guy. Thanks, Hussein. Hopefully I'm not saying anything incendiary or anything unkind. Hello, right, Ratish. Thanks. I don't have a Hussein. Thanks, Baloo. Square dude. Facing this way, I guess. Make it wider than he is tall. Got a lot of good facing that way. Facing this way. This pattern is a little bit of a trial. Just trying to work on a grid and seeing how I can push these faces. It's sort of like taking a shape, basic shape, and creating patterns with that, but just adding some element of personality and some sort of structure or recognizability to it. Thank you, Fran. It sort of came out of looking at masks and the history of sort of simplifying faces, whether or not it's because of technological capabilities of the time or if it's just an aesthetic, but looking at masks and artwork and how much sort of design goes into artwork from around the world, where the idea is to communicate something as clearly and succinctly and easily as possible. And different cultures have different ways that they simplify or design faces and bodies, depending on a bunch of different factors, but you end up with eyes, mouth, nose are typically the most important elements, depending on how you want to illustrate and what you want to convey. So that's what these have. And if you're going from a three-dimensional perspective, nose and bridge of eyes. and seeing how. So these are sort of based off of masks, but also some birds, owls and such that have that elongated sort of beak thing, but this is applied to a more rigid, a little bit more geometric pattern, having these as squares as opposed to when it's rounded like this. But barn owls have sort of face like this, and then the beak is here. And these wouldn't be shiny, they'd just be black or brown, and then going around there. And there's a lot of masks that have this sort of shape, and it'll be carved down there. And then you'll probably have some sort of mouth, either open or closed, in there. You also have a lot of helmets throughout history that cover the bridge of the nose so that you don't get hit on the nose if there's a sword or something coming down. And that's just where your helmet would rest there, and probably kind of pointy. I don't know. But it's all ways of simplifying and illustrating faces. And so applying that to a sort of grid, it's just more or less, this is just rectangles and right angles being applied to a general grid format, but then adding a little bit of personality to it by giving it eyes, nose, mouth, and then playing with how much you can push that and still have it recognizable. And part of that comes from me establishing this sort of format. If you're here watching this, you likely have seen other work that I've done that informs your ability to recognize these figures. It's different if you come across it without any sort of prior knowledge or context. And so I can push that even further if it's recognizable within the context of if you're familiar with the work. Depending on your preconceived notions or prior knowledge, you may or may not recognize some of these as faces. Which is interesting to me. And then it's just filling out a space in different ways. And what that means, what that looks like. I think I did that yet. Okay, I'm left with 4. Should I do a super long one? I don't want it to be evenly spaced because I have this line that's pretty strong here. So it's either 3 and 1. I think I might do 4. Do it long this direction. Hey Sam, how's it going? Someone just started making a smoothie. Because this is ultimately living in a digital space, I'm not taking the time to fill in all of these solids. So I already had a smoothie. Sometimes, oh, it's lunch break for you. I was like, it's late for lunch. Being on the West Coast and stuff. Super long guy. Oh, I did not keep up with, initially I was going to try and count how many figures there were with my mechanical counter, but then I got distracted, which I kind of knew would happen. I don't like looking at After Effects for long periods of time. Before I got at all comfortable with Premiere, I used After Effects to edit footage that was just like the timing of things, and it was the worst. Because I'd be like, I need to cut this down a tiny bit, and then I'd have to pre-render it a bunch of times. I did it. It just was not the best way to do it. Now, what's today's date? Today's 28th. Hope you got a nice ripe mango. Okay, now it's scan time. I'm gonna see whether or not I'll be able to. Photoshop is bad for editing video, but I have done it before. Mostly if I was trying to rotoscope something, and I'd be like, this is faster than if I were to try to re-export something from After Effects or from Premiere, but I don't have to open up another program, I'll just do it natively. But then it ends up taking longer. Okay, so now I need to wipe down my scanner, because yesterday was a hand thing. So there's a handprint right across the middle of this. There's my palm. You can't see it probably in the video, but very much my handprint was there since I had it sitting on there for like 10 minutes yesterday while I scanned my hand at 2400 DPI. So let's show that guy. Getting an overview scan. Thanks, Valentina. That's nice. I need to shift this a little bit this way. Do another overview. That's better. And whatever. Okay. This full thing scanned. This is going to a different location now because it's a new day, which means a new folder that's got the date on it, because if I do this consistently, I'm going to very much lose track of things. Blockhead, grid, JPEG, do not need it, 2400. We'll just do a simple 600 DPI, right? If this is 8, no, I'm going to do 1200. Better to scan at a higher resolution than I need than a lower one. So now it's just going. 600 okay? Maybe 600 is okay. Because actually 400, yeah. Let's just do 600. Sorry for... In my mind, 600 DPI. This listed as DPI on my interface. I know that's PPI. The image capture listed as DPI. I know what it represents. Image capture is wrong. Maybe it's referring to the resolution of the printout that I'm scanning, which what I'm scanning technically has no resolution because it's hand-drawn. Maybe it comes down to the fibers if you were getting into it. So let me show you what I did there. This is going to be giant for a second, because this is a big image and I'm not prepping this ahead of time. Okay, grid, and now it's going to be covered. Oh wait, I forgot to turn this off color. So there's a little bit of a tone to this guy. There you go. Now let's see if this can do display capture and what it does. Woohoo! Nice. Okay. Let's go to Photoshop. This is way too big. I need to adjust this. Crop. To window. No, wait. Photoshop. You get to see my interface a little bit there. Okay. We're just going in and filling solids. Let's see how this. So let's remove the color, change this to be much darker. And now let's make a new layer for that. I'm doing destructive editing. Yep. It's a little too dark here. This is so much faster than if I were doing this by hand. I need to do this a little bit more. Oh. There's a good chance I'm going to drop some frames here. Nope. My computer's making a lot of fan noise since I'm broadcasting and running Photoshop from the same laptop. Okay. Let's try and do this as methodically as possible, because there's a good chance. Oh, no, it's this little edge here. Good chance that I'm going to miss some lips or something. Yep. I'm running Photoshop, doing a window capture, and broadcasting. Now let's film this again. So let's just look over. Let's clean that up. And this is actually upside down, which doesn't really have a clear sense of orientation, but alright, see you, Sam. Sorry I didn't see that earlier. I don't like using color because I like form and line, and getting into color, it's just too much work and there's too many variables. So I don't feel super comfortable in it. It also comes from not having money to print things. Going from there and being like, I would rather print in black and white. And then it's also a result or a response to the fact that on displays, any sort of just make this maybe it can be the same size. Let's save this in here. Okay, grid filled. Just make a JPEG. Save that out, and then get rid of display capture. Image. Change this to the filled. There you go. When you work in a digital space, the every screen is a little different. Every format, every place that what you produce, where it lives, how it exists, varies. And so there are all these different slightly varied color spaces, which means that you don't have control over how things exist. And if you're like, I really love this blue, you can't know whether or not that blue is going to look the same on this person's phone and that person's phone and that display and that projector and all these different variables that can change and influence and make it so your work lives completely differently and is perceived differently. But if you're working in black and white, there's sort of an understanding that it's a yes or no sort of thing. It's maybe some degree of grayscale, but it's just it's more of a binary function. And so regardless of the fact that color spaces will look differently, if you have white on one screen, it'll look different than white on another screen. But the understanding is that is white and that's white as well, even if it looks a little bit different. And there is that shift in perception. Hello, Adam is. So if you're looking at different screens and the emotional response to blue is very different from one screen to the next, but the understanding and response to black should be approximately the same, because those blacks are understood to be black, even if it varies a bit from one to the other. And you could argue that the same thing applies for the black and white things and having different screens and lack of control over that. But I just don't like dealing with color. There's so many more variables with how something looks when it comes to color, and things look so different when it's printed. And I could talk about translation. How in digital space, since I'm working physically, digital screens are comprised of additive color, where you have 3 colors of light. You have red, green, and blue, and those add together to make white, and you vary what those combination levels are to create not every color, but most colors. And you're combining and creating color in a format where if you combine red light and blue light, you end up with magenta. and it's brighter and more vibrant when you combine those two elements together. Where when you're working physically with pigment, it's subtractive color, and your primary colors are red, yellow, blue. And when you combine a red and a blue, you end up with a more muddled and a darker color. So you're working in completely different spaces when you're working physically with pigment than when you're working in a digital space with light and pixels. And the translation, when you're going from physical to digital, it's approximating things. It's averaging things out, and you can take advantage of that, or you can have issues with it and frustrations, and you can be left with a worse looking image because you don't understand how that translation is taking place. And then if you're going a third step, going physical to digital, then back to physical, you're changing that translation yet again. And depending on how it's being printed, when you're doing color, most of the time you're again mixing colors. So whatever vibrant thing you saw in a digital space, because it's light that's being combined and it gets brighter and more vibrant, it gets more muddled when you move away from those. It gets darker and less vibrant when you move away from those primary colors when you're working. Typically it would be in a CMYK print, which is cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. K for key is black. And you're overlapping those elements or mixing them together, those pigments, and those pigments get more muddled as you combine those colors together, which is why a lot of the time when you see a print of a painting, it looks worse than the painting itself, because it's limiting the mixing colors that you're starting from. You can do spot printing where you have a specially created pigment that's more vibrant. That would be like a magenta, not a magenta, like a purple. And with that, you'd end up having, it's more expensive because it's more times that you're having to print things, and it's special ink that's not produced in as large of quantities, and you have to order it and have it come in typically, and that's where Pantone comes into the mix. They have special colors that are pre-mixed using other pigments. But if you're limiting yourself to those 4 mixed colors, you can create an approximation of most colors, but you won't get super vibrant non-primary colors. Which, do I have a book anywhere in close proximity that I can use as an example of color mixing? Well, that looks like it's spot color. Let's see if this is spot color or not, this orange that's here. So here's some books. I'm going to get out my microscope guy. Unplug this one. Plug in microscope guy. Mute that image, and macro is there. Okay, let's move this guy up. Ooh, what's that guy? Oh, that's display capture. So this orange looks like it might be spot printed. But even with this, you see the contrast in what this looks like as it's exposed differently. The color difference between this camera and this camera. So see how this blue is actually black and cyan. What you're seeing is not this blue. What you're seeing is a mix of offset printing, where you have cyan and black, and it approximates. My hair's getting curlier. But like this orange looks to be a spot color where it's just solid orange. But if you get to this guy, his head, you got these offsets of yellow and red, or magenta and some blue, a little bit of black in there, and you get that pattern going. So he's a little bit more muddled than the orange that's here. You see how many little dots are adding together. And then this one, you can see a little bit more because there's some light colors, but this orange is super bright. But then it gets a little bit muddled as you go around. And I just want things to be as bright or as dark as possible. And the easiest way to do that is using the most simplified things, black and white, and it translates super well from one form to another. I don't really have anything more to go on about. I will post up this video on YouTube if you want to watch it in full. You can also look at other ones. I already filled in the black, but I'm going to do some cleanup on these edges before I post it. I just didn't want to spend too much time working on that. I'm also not super aware of everything that's on display here while I'm doing display capture, so don't want to spend too much time on there. Any questions, concerns, thoughts? Thank you, Valentina, for participating. Sorry if I went on for a while with talking about offset printing and such and translations of things, but appreciate you asking and being a part of the conversation. I'll give it like a minute because there's time delay getting to you, responding, and me seeing, and then translations, how things go from one place to another. How information goes from A to B, B to C, C to D. Okay, thank you for watching. I'm gonna disconnect. It'll take a second, so I always have the awkward waving goodbye bit. It takes a minute to close out.